Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to the Wake Up Workday morning show. I am your host, Tony Gilfillan, coming in hot from Carline. We had a 2 hour delay for our kids this morning. We survived the winter storm this weekend, but now we're back. And I missed the bus this morning for my middle, and we had to run through carpool. So coming in a little quick, little hot, but no big deal. We're gonna jump right in. So not sure if you guys were watching some releases yesterday or the day before, rather, but OpenAI re-released their Codex, which is their IDE for building the different stuff within ChatGPT. I did get a chance to play with it a little bit. There is a neat little video out there that kind of covers some of the higher level stuff within Codex. So you can do work tree stuff. You can, the usual suspects of just asking it to build different things. Some of the cooler stuff that I've found, and we'll touch on that when I play with it a little bit, is the ability to do automations and skills. So it can build, kind of like sort of similar to like orchestration builder, like you're dragging and dropping skills and doing different automations on a schedule, which is pretty cool, as well as being able to build skills, kind of like an MCP server type of situation within OpenAI. So we'll see if this is kind of worth its salt, and maybe this is the thing that puts OpenAI back on the map when it comes to the coding side of things, as ClaudeCode has been kind of the top tier coding platform for the last few months, alongside Cursor as well. But we're gonna play with that in a minute. Also, I found this earlier today, called Own Your Code. It's a little vibe coded thing by a developer that essentially wanted to learn more than just create. So I'll drop this in the video description if you guys are interested. Basically, it walks you through how to build versus just building it for you. So it's kind of an interesting way for junior developers to kind of pick up all the coding, coding patterns and coding syntax. Um, Obviously, the syntax is a little bit less needed these days, but I think the idea of kind of learning the code versus just having everything built for you is pretty important. So definitely think this is worth a look at. I might play with it a little bit later. And then I also saw this one, which is some coding tips for using ClaudeCode from Boris, one of the creators of ClaudeCode. Some of these definitely have to take with a grain of salt, because I believe it's basically taken with the idea that you don't really have any limits on your tokens, because a lot of these are going to be very token heavy. Do more in parallel, so spinning up multiple different Claude sessions to do multiple things at once. Obviously, when you have multiple agents spinning up different work streams all at the same time, that is going to eat up more tokens than one agent, plugging away at one task. This is a really good one. Start every complex task in plan mode. I would say start every task in plan mode. Like build an idea, build a design before you actually start getting into building your applications, even with these IDEs. This is another pretty golden one that I've started doing. Is telling Claude to essentially make a note of problems that it runs into, because Claude will try to do different things and build your solutions in the way that it sees fit, and it will make mistakes. It will do things incorrectly. It will attempt to build stuff in the way that it determines that it's the best way to do it, but inevitably it will misread documentation. It will make assumptions that are incorrect, and you can actually tell Claude in a markdown to say, don't make this mistake again. You've done this before. Try to avoid this in the future. And it's actually pretty good at trying to avoid those rules and avoiding the things that it's done incorrect in the past. Going down the list here, create your own skills. Again, interested to see how well the Codex does this um, in OpenAI. So I actually have not done this a whole lot in ClaudeCode, so I should probably start doing that as well. Creating those reusable skills that these LLMs are able to reuse and essentially not have to redo every single time you ask it to. Um, this one's pretty self-explanatory. Don't have to be too prescriptive on problems that it runs into. If you copy and paste an error from a log into Claude, it will attempt to diagnose and come up with the best way to fix that. I've found actually using plan mode for errors is another good way to talk to Claude about thinking through fixing things instead of just going in and fixing whatever it sees fit. Because it will inevitably create duplicate code. It'll create patterns that don't really need to be done if the error that it's trying to fix isn't really an error, or the error it's trying to fix is actually functioning properly. So just keep that in mind when you're fixing bugs and dumping logs into Claude when it's not in plan mode, that you might run into issues like that. Leveling up your prompting. So asking it to actually talk back to you and ask questions is kind of a new thing that I've seen. It actually asks more questions generally. And the more questions it asks, the more specific the output gets, which is always a good thing. And then using terminal and an environment setup. This one I actually have not done a lot as well. I mostly operate in the IDE. I am not a big CLI person. Sub agents, again, this is going to be another token hog. So if you're using one agent that's using 16 other agents and they're all using Opus, that's a good way to run through your daily limits in about an hour. And then Claude for data analytics. That one's not super shocking. Just use it to analyze a lot of code that a human's going to take a heck of a lot longer to do. And then learning with Claude, I've touted this one as well, like using Claude to essentially explain the problem instead of just doing the problem. So like when you're iterating through a problem and you're building an app and you're trying to solve issues, try to talk to Claude instead of just having it fix the problem for you. Ask what the problem is, where this error is coming from, what the error means, what the package or wherever the error is originating from. Have it describe the issue and create a technical document to describe and explain why the problem exists and how to essentially multiple different options on how to fix those. So again, a lot of these are really good tips, but some of them are definitely going to be big token hogs. And I'll throw this link as well in the video description. All right, well, so let's jump over to our Codex. So this is Codex. I am not paying for OpenAI at the moment. This is the free version. I believe Codex is included in your, let's see here. I'm actually not, I don't think my screen is updating. 1 second. Audio screen capture. There we go. Okay, so you guys kind of missed the few things I was showing, but it was really just text. So the audio is more than sufficient to describe the things that I was showing. So this is Codex. This is the new OpenAI. Not new. They released this last year, but they kind of revamped it and added a bunch of new stuff to this. So definitely interesting to see what they've done and what updates might be worth checking out. So the big ones that I saw on the their little intro video is the work tree. So most of these IDs have parallel work tree capabilities built into these. So that's essentially the branching logic off of Git. So like when you have a Git repo, you're not always wanting to push into the master branch. It's actually, that's pretty bad practice in general. So Work trees are those branches, and I believe I've been when I've been digging into this one a little bit, is that it actually doesn't branch the way that Git branches. These are actually copies on your local machine when it does the work trees. So it's a little bit different than branching in Git. So it's actually making separate copies of these projects and then merging them all back together when it does do its commits. So we'll see how well that actually works. I do want to play with that a little bit. And then up here, this is nothing new. These is just your different threads. So essentially you can have multiple different chats, very similar to the ChatGPT experience. And then below here is that automations I mentioned. I do want to play with this one as well. So my idea was I want to build my little expense app that I was working on last week. Since we do have functioning API calls, I want to essentially create those orchestrations into skills that then I can automate to accomplish that recurring expense transaction. So if you didn't watch any of those videos last week, essentially what I was doing was I have a recurring transaction on my credit card for my corporate card that comes in every month, and I want that to essentially automate that exact transaction because it comes in every month, same project, same amount, same vendor, and I want that to be able to auto create and auto submit every single month. And I already have an orchestration that is able to do that. So all I really need to do is tie that into some sort of automation. I could stick that into an integration system and put that into my Workday tenant directly, but I do want to play around with this particular automations piece of this Codex environment. So we'll fiddle with that a little bit. And then skills, this is again that kind of reusable skills, and that essentially we're going to tie a skill and automation together to accomplish that expense report generation. So my idea here, ideally, we'll find some way to tie to my API that comes from my orchestration to create my automation. And then the last bit I noticed was you can kind of jump automatically to really any IDE out there. VS Code and Cursor, obviously big ones that we are using here. And then you have here is your commit. So this is that source logic, tying your repositories to your Git. And then over here, I thought there was a way to like send this to the mobile app. Maybe not. They had that in the demo, but I don't see it up here. Maybe that's for pro customers only. All right, well, so let's kind of create something here just to fiddle around with what this thing can do. So it's got some examples here. I'm assuming it's pretty good at doing these examples. Build a classic snake game. Let's see what it can do. If this impresses me, this might be the nail in the coffin that gets me to resubscribe to OpenAI. On top of my work licenses, I also have Gemini through my phone. I am a unfortunate green bubble. And then I'm also paying for ClaudeCode Pro for my own personal fun projects. And that's one thing I do want to show you guys tomorrow is I was fiddling with Cursor, the Cursor CLI, and if you've been watching for the last few weeks, a couple weeks ago, I showed this little web app that I built that kind of talks to a little Python server that then talks to my IDE. So I've been iterating on that a bit and have actually turned it into just a headless API app. So it's creating its own agents within the Cursor CLI, which still uses your license, your Cursor license, So you're not actually hitting those additional API costs, which is super nice. So you're able to then make use of your subscription a little bit more, using that web app versus having to be at your computer using your tokens every single day. So plan on definitely using that more often from my phone. I'll show you guys that tomorrow because I am pretty proud of where it is today. It is a definitely a vibe coded app, but it is kind of humming along as far as the rough the rough state it was in a couple weeks ago. All right, so what did it do? Let's see this. I want to see this transfer to Visual Code. Did it open? I don't even think it opened for me. Open in Visual Code, please. Not impressing me so far. Can I open in Cursor? That's not the repository that I wanted. Or yes, it is. I just noticed it's stuck it into my existing repository that I had open. So this Slack tickets is actually our ticketing application that we use for our hackathons. But I don't want Snake to necessarily be in our Slack application. Does it work? That's the real thing. So let's bring up a terminal. I could have Cursor kind of run this for me, but we'll do it the old-fashioned way. np. So I'm installing my little snake game that it created. I don't see it actually in here. Can I see the diff in there? I don't want to commit that now. Here's a diff panel. Diff is too large to display. That's not cool. I mean, why have an IDE if you can't see the differences? That's definitely a mark against you. Because I want to be able to see, there's 18 files I'm assuming changed. Not a huge fan of the file tree system that it's given me. Yeah, because it's showing me it's done multiple different changes here, but I want to be able to view them. I don't want to view it in. I want to view it in the IDE. Yeah, that's not good. I'm not a fan of that. So like, I was hoping this would be more of a cursor-esque experience versus just like the web version of of ChatGPT, but it's leaning more toward just a web app. All right, well, let's see if we can't get this snake running. npm start. That'll start my Bolt app. Yeah, the Bolt app is not going to have a token, which is expected. Hopefully the app.js JavaScript was able to start, because then I should be able to play this. Nope. All right, let's dump this into a new repository because I think it's conflicting with the Bolt framework, which is the Slack's API stuff. So if I bring up my cursor again, let it get rid of all that nonsense that I don't need. I don't need, again, don't need Snake as a Python app to be sitting in a repository that is completely different. Let's create a new project. Does creating a new project create a new folder? Yes, it does. Excellent. We'll just call this Snake. Move. I want you to have permission to do that. Connect Codex Web. Oh, I think that's kind of cool. You can essentially send these projects to the web app version, as well as, I'm assuming this is their cloud agent. All right, so cleaned up my old project. Creating a new thread in this new project. That was partially my fault of putting that in an existing repo, but it definitely wasn't smart enough to make it, just work out of the box. It stuck it into the same JavaScript file that was existing. All right, what is it asking me? Before I scaffold anything, can you confirm which path exists in the project setup? Path? Yeah, it's completely empty. What models you got here? Medium, high, extra high codec. Aren't these both GPT 5.2? What's the difference between 5.2 and 5.2 codecs? Just click new thread up here. Where does it stick this? Describe the differences of all the GPT 5.2 models. Specifically, codecs and non-codecs. See, how did it know where to put that? Because I did a new thread up here. Maybe it's just the last thing you put a thread in. I just clicked new thread up here and it just guessed which one to stick it in. Whatever. All right, let's start this up again. Now I should be able to go here. did create a snake for me. Start or space. You know, if you're going to have an example prompt, you would think it would just kind of work flawlessly, but why is there a pause screen right in the middle? It doesn't even work very well. It does work. It's snake. Well, it is a functioning game, I guess, but you would think it would be a little bit more polished if they had created this prompt for you. Implement only the snake loop, grid movement, yep, game over, restart, reuse existing project tool frameworks, do not add new dependencies, keep UI minimal, inspect repo, and find right place to add a small interactive game. So I did try to add it to my existing app.js. I guess that's what was part of the prompt. Render simple snake, add basic tests. Well, it did work. I'm not super blown away by this yet. I am going to play a little bit more with the different models and the work tree bit, but it has not yet gotten me to the point where I feel like I need to resubscribe to OpenAI yet. So interesting. We still will play with the automations and the skills. I'm going to plan on doing that tomorrow for you guys live, and then on Friday I will show you my fancy little cursor mobile app. So thank you guys for watching, and we